about using Turnitin and a Turnitin to assignment, which may look a little bit different from what you're used to since y'all have just moved over and gotten everything kind of transferred over from using an older integration to a newer integration. And I'm going to basically start at the beginning with creating the assignment and all the different settings for the assignment, how that may work out. Then I'll switch over to the student view and show you how the students would submit to the assignment, how they would access the Originality report score and spelling and grammar suggestions. We'll go into a deep dive into the Originality report score and what does it mean. And then we'll talk about providing feedback to your students, and then I'll show you how students access their feedback when the feedback release date occurs. So in order to create an assignment, I'm going to go over here and turn editing on. It's the first thing I'm going to do. And I'm going to add an activity or a resource. And for me, I'm going to click on Turnitin Assignment 2. I'm going to click Add. And I'm going to be taken to this screen where I'm going to fill out the information. So my Turnitin assignment name, I know I'm not very creative on my name, sorry about that. If you want to put in directions or a description, you can put that there if you want. You can choose to display the description on the course page. From submission type, you can choose either a file upload or a text submission. Both of those will work for checking with Turnitin. If it's a text submission, it's just a text entry box. So maybe you're only worried about you had a question and you wanted the students to provide a 3, maybe 5 sentence answer. Maybe text entry works. For the purposes of training today, I'm actually going to do it as a file upload to show you what that looks like. I can choose the number of parts I want my assignment to have. And that may help you if you have, an assignment, maybe assignment 3 is a paper, and part 1 is going to be the rough draft, and part 2 is going to be the final draft. If I wanted to keep them both together, then I can put this assignment as 2 parts, maybe rough draft, final draft. If I don't want to, and just, this is the rough draft, and then a completely separate assignment, I'll do my final draft, then you can just leave that number of parts as 1. Maximum file size load, you can put that up there. If you want to allow submissions of any file type, you can. I do caution you that Turnitin generates an Originality report based on readable text. And readable text comes in the format of Word documents, PowerPoints, PDFs, Excel spreadsheets, text files, etc. Turnitin cannot generate an Originality report based on image files. Even if it was an image of text, it's non-readable text. So Turnitin is always going to return a 0% match because there's no readable text to match it to. So if you want to make sure that your students are uploading readable file types, then you might want to not allow submissions of any file type, and that restricts the students to uploading only things that Turnitin can check for similarity. If, however, you need them to upload an image file, you can do that and allow submissions of any file type, but you are probably at that point not worried about an Originality report score. You can choose to display the Originality reports to students, and I hope that you do if you're using Turnitin as a teaching tool and not so much as a gotcha tool. It's always good to allow the students to see their Originality report score and perhaps even their spelling and grammar suggestions and learn from any mistakes that they've made and be able to apply that information to future assignments. I'm going to choose to show the grade as a percentage or as a fraction. I can do either one of those. You can choose to auto refresh your grades or you can do it manually. I'm going to be lazy and choose to do it auto. I'm going to click on this part right here and open up grade, the grade section. I can put it as a scale or a point if I wanted to do that. I can put in the maximum point value for my assignment. In this case, it's 100. If I have grade categories, I can put that in there. And if I want to enter in a grade to pass, I can. Under assignment part 1, because remember, I only did one part, I can give it a name if I want to. I can give it a start date, a due date, and a post date. The post date is when do you want your students to see your feedback? And that's a personal preference for the instructor. So everybody likes to do things a little bit differently. I like to make sure all my I's are dotted and all my T's are crossed on my feedback before I let my students see it. So I prefer to have my students view the feedback all at the same time. And if I thought that it was going to take me a week to grade the assignment, then I would set the feedback release date to be 1 week after my due date. And that's what I would be, that's when my students would be able to see all my feedback. If, however, I don't mind that student A sees their feedback before student B, who sees it before student C, then I can set my post date to equal my due date, and they will see my feedback as I'm grading. Again, I can put in my maximum marks on that, which is 100 points. I can open up the Originality report options here. And if I want to allow submissions after the due date, I can. And that's, by the way, allowing late submissions, not allowing a late resubmissions. So only those students who have not submitted previous to the due date will be able to submit once and only once after the due date. I can choose when to generate the report. And this kind of speaks to how do you want to use the Originality report score and spelling and grammar suggestions. Do you want to use it as formative feedback or summative feedback? If I wanted to use this as formative feedback, I would allow my students to submit their assignment, get an Originality report score and spelling and grammar suggestions, make changes as needed to their paper based on these suggestions, and then submit a better paper to me. So that would be using it as formative feedback. If, however, I wanted my students to, I just wanted to use it as summative feedback, I can choose to generate the reports immediately and the students cannot resubmit. So it's a one and done deal. Or I can allow my students to resubmit all they want to, but they're not going to see the Originality report until the due date. So the first and the third options means the students can't do anything about fixing their paper. The second option allows the student to be able to get feedback, make changes, and hopefully submit a better paper to you. So this gives you choice on how you want to use the Originality report and spelling and grammar suggestions. And for the purposes of this training, I'm going to choose formative feedback. I can choose to store the submitted papers in the standard paper repository or not. And there may be times when I don't want to store the papers in the repository. So if I did not make this a two-part assignment for rough draft and final draft, and instead I made it a rough draft is in one assignment and final draft is in another, I may not want to store the rough draft in the repository because then it would compare against the final draft and I might get an artificially high Originality report score based on that. And if that's the case, it might be better in that particular situation to not store the rough draft in the repository and maybe only store the final draft in the repository. For the purposes of training today, I'm going to choose no repository because my test papers always come back as a 100% match. As I scroll down, I can choose to check against stored student papers. I can choose to check my submissions against the current and archived internet sources. And I can choose to check the submissions against journals, periodicals, and publications. If I only wanted to check my submissions against the student paper repository, I can. If I wanted to make sure my Originality report was complete, I would want to make sure that all three of those say yes. I can choose to exclude a bibliography. And that is the bibliography section, not internal citations. So the bibliography section of the paper I can choose to remove. I can also choose to exclude quoted material if I wanted to. Or I can choose to exclude small matches. And if I wanted to do small matches, I can choose a threshold for words. So maybe I'm not worried about matches of less than 20 words. And those are not consecutive matches, by the way, not like 20 consecutive words, but it could be 5 over here and 5 over here and 6 over here. If I'm not worried about less than 20 words for my match, I can set that threshold. I can also do it as a percentage and put in a percentage here. So if maybe 10% sounded good, but the student submitted a 2,000 word paper, and I set that at 10%, then I'd be excluding all matches of less than 200 words, which may not be what I want. I'm not going to exclude any matches. I must admit, having used Turnitin, I usually cast a wide net at the assignment level because I can adjust these at the individual submission level. So if I need to do some investigation, I can. Rarely did I exclude the bibliography. I never excluded quoted material for two reasons. The first one is I wanted it to be highlighted for my students. I wanted them to do their due diligence and make sure all their, got quotation marks, we get your citation, and I was willing to accept a slightly higher originality report score to make sure that they did that. The other reason I never excluded quoted material is that when your students, they Google ways to get around Turnitin, and the second thing that shows up is put quotation marks at the first of the paper and at the end of the paper and make them white. And if your instructor is excluded quoted material, you'll get a 0% match. However, what it fails to tell you is that when you do that, Turnitin lets the instructor know that more than 30% of the paper is found in quotations. So that gives you a chance to go in and investigate it. Under GradeMark options, close that. Under GradeMark options, I can, if I have a rubric, I can grab it from this drop-down menu. If I haven't created a rubric before, if I need to create a new one, I can choose to launch Rubric Manager. And from the drop-down, I can see what rubrics are available to me and the ones that I've created. And if I want to create a new one, I can click on the 3 horizontal tabs and click Create New Rubric. You can see that there are 3 different types of rubrics: a percentage rubric, a custom rubric, which is the pencil and paper icon, and a qualitative rubric. Qualitative rubric means that you are not using the rubric to provide a grade to the student. You're using it for feedback only. So you'd fill this out and manually enter in a 91. Or you fill that out and you would manually enter in a 95 for the point value. A points-based rubric means that you would put in the point value for each of these squares. And whatever point or whatever square you clicked on, it adds it up, and that's what the student earned for their assignment. Having said that though, a 50-point rubric needs to match to a 50-point assignment, and a 100-point rubric needs to match to a 100-point assignment, because if a 50-point rubric matched to a 100-point assignment, everybody fails. And a 100-point rubric matching to a 50-point assignment means everybody passes, hopefully. And if dealing with that is just one straw on that camel's back that's just a little bit much, you can choose to do a percent rubric, and that means that you can use this rubric to grade a 10-point assignment, a 50-point assignment, a 100-point assignment, doesn't matter. When you fill out the rubric, it automatically calculates to the point value. Notice that on the left-hand side, you see criterion 1, criterion 2, criterion 3, criterion 4. That's not very helpful for your students. So give it a name. Is it evidence? Is it argument? Is it grammar? Good gracious, I need some more caffeine apparently. Maybe this is citations. Whatever it is that you have as your criteria, give it a name. And you can put in the description right there. What is it you mean by evidence? What is it you mean by argument? What is it you mean by grammar? What is it you mean by citations? If you need to add another one, you can click on that plus sign and add another one. If you need to delete something, you can choose to delete it. And notice that there is a 0%, 0%, and 0% listed here. You can weigh them all equally. If you want them to weigh all equally, it's 25, 25, 25, 25. If you want to differentiate, you can. Oops. Sorry about that. Where did my too many windows open? There we go. Sorry about that. Oh, really? It's going to open up the whole thing again. Okay. And then across the top, you can see that there were scales. Scale 1, Scale 2, Scale 3 are not very helpful. Put in your words. What is this advanced? Is this proficient? Is this average? If you need to add another one, you can. Maybe this is needs improvement. Whatever it is you want to put in there, dad blast it, you can. But when you do that, you also need to rank them. So if you had a 4-point scale, you need to say what's 4, what's 3, what's 2, and what's 1. So if this was advanced, I would put that as 4. If this was proficient, that would be maybe 3. If this was average, maybe that's 2. This one right here, maybe that's a 1. Maybe that was the needs improvement. If I had a 5-point scale, it would be 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 6 points, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 3.3, 2, 1. But I can also put in the descriptions. What is it that I consider advanced for criterion number 1? What is it that I consider proficient for criterion 1? Needs improvement. Average. What is it that I think is average for criterion 2? I can put in the descriptions for each of these so that my students know exactly what it is that I'm expecting from them. When I'm done, I can enter in my rubric name here. If I wanted to share out a rubric, I can click on the white arrow pointing off to the right to export my rubric, and I can send it by email to my colleague and they can import the rubric. Turnitin rubrics follow you from semester to semester, course to course, and assignment to assignment, so you only have to create them once. Are there any questions about rubrics before I go on from there? All right. I actually already have a rubric that's ready to go.
Stephanie.
Uh-huh.
From what I was seeing, were you just clicking off of that, the rubric you were building, and it was disappearing and you had to go back and start over again?
That's because I didn't save it. Usually you save it first and then it just kind of stays there, but my computer's, when I was clicking on, it was being a pain. Clicking off of it, clicking off the window is being a pain.
Okay, so I just want to know, do faculty need to expect if they accidentally click off of that rubric, it's going to close and they have to start it over?
Right. Go. First things first, go ahead and save the rubric, and therefore it saves all your work as you go through.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. I can choose to enable E-Rater grammar check if I want to. In this case, I do, so that provides grammar and spelling suggestions to my student. I can choose the handbook level from the drop-down. Advanced, high school, middle school, elementary school, and English learners are your choices. Usually for the college level, I choose advanced. I can choose to compare against the US English Dictionary, the UK English Dictionary, or both. And I can also choose which categories I want enabled by default. So if I want all 5 categories checked, I can do that. If I only want spelling and grammar checked, then I can do that. We won't worry about these settings over here. Those are Moodle settings that really don't take to turn it in. I'm going to click on Save and Return to Course. And as you can see, here is the assignment that I just created. And I put in the directions right there, or you can put in a description, whichever one you would like. Are there any questions about the assignment creation process?
Hi, Stephanie. Just to verify back on that rubric real quick. So if faculty have created a Word document, is there any type of copy and paste functionality, or they just sort of have to retype all that information in?
Oh, no, you can definitely copy and paste. And there's also the ability to, not edit title, thank you. There's also the ability, if you have your rubric in a Excel spreadsheet form, you can actually import it. GradeMark. There we go. Under Launch Rubric Manager, if you go in there and you can choose to import or export that rubric. If you want to import a rubric, you can do it from Excel spreadsheets. If you have it that way, this is the kind of the format. For the most part, what I usually do is just copy and paste. If it was a Moodle rubric, I would just copy and paste in each of the squares as needed.
Great, thanks.
No problem. And I am logging in now.
Just step in for a second. Keep in mind that using Word or different aspects of Office software, when you copy and paste into Moodle, sometimes the HTML and some gibberish script in the background that you can't see gets pasted in there too, and that can essentially give some crazy results. So I don't know if I would recommend copy and pasting from Word.
You'll be able to see that in the Turnitin rubrics, though. If it does come up with something like a wingding, there's a space, like a big space that shows up there.
Yeah, I haven't had any trouble doing that, Leah. That's how I've gotten all my rubrics in, is a copy and paste out of Word into there, and it hasn't, that I can tell, caused any problems.
Okay, perfect.
I got a follow-up question, Stephanie, on the parts. If you selected multiple parts, in your example, you had like a draft and then a final version or whatever, does that generate a separate grade category for each of those parts as well, so that you can grade the draft in one manner and grade the final version in another manner?
No, the maximum marks is for both assignments. So if you want them to both, by default, they'll both count equally. And so it'll be 50%, 50%, but you can adjust the percentage if you want it to be like 25, 75. But okay. Otherwise, it's one grade that goes in. So that's just kind of something to think about, however you want to go forward.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Let me click Save and Return to Course and then refresh my student page. There we go. And as I can see, there's assignment number 3. I am in as a student, and I can see I've got assignment 3 to do. Upcoming event. I'm going to click on assignment number 3, and I'll be able to see, as it loads up, that this is assignment 3 is a rough draft. Here's the start date, here's the due date, there's the post date. These are how many points it's available for. I want to see that rubric. I can click on the rubric and see what's expected of me.
Please report to the car rider line. Andrew, Maureen, to the car rider line.
Here it is right here. I can also see if I am allowed to resubmit. I can submit my paper first, and if I submit that paper and I'm allowed to resubmit, then I can actually do that here. And I can see my directions, if you will, please submit your assignment.
What about the time for submissions? Can we set a time?
Like a due date?
Yeah, I see the due date, but
that's the time that it's due.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, it's 3:06. It just happens to be in military time, but yes.
Okay, so we can reset that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And if you need to edit anything, of course, I'm in as a student right now, so I can't do that. But if I need to edit anything, I can.
Okay.
I can either do it by edit the settings there. And again, here's that time that you would fill in.
Okay.
Or I can actually click on the assignment and edit the settings that way, but it's just for like dates and stuff like that. It'll give you the ability to edit the start date, the due date, the post date, and also the point value if you do it from here.
Thank you.
And is that military time, is that set on your end, or is that something that we've done inside Moodle?
This is based on the time zone that your Moodle environment is in.
Okay.
So Eastern time zone.
I'm sorry, I meant the military time display.
That actually probably is on the Moodle side as well, as to how you want display.
Okay, we'll look into that. Thank you.
So here I am as a student. I've seen all of my information. I'm ready to submit my paper and click on Submit Paper. Give it a title. Again, not very creative. I apologize. I'm going to find my, I'm going to upload a file. It happens to be on my desktop, so I'm going to navigate to that. Here's my author, choose a license, upload the file. It takes a moment for it to upload, and it'll ask me to double check that everything is what I want, and this is the correct file. Don't forget to check I've abided by the policy for academic honesty. This is it. If this is the one, click Add Submission. It's going to upload the submission to turn it in, and it's going to give a digital receipt to the students that they can, print out if they want to, or they can just keep that student ID with them if they want. And then I, as a student, again, can print out that digital receipt or view the digital receipt as needed here. Here's my assignment title. Paper ID is listed here. Timestamp for when I submitted will be listed here. When the Originality report score has generated, it'll show up here. And when my instructor has released my grade and my feedback, then it'll show up here. I'm gonna refresh my page, kind of get things kick-started again. And I can see that I've gotten an 11. And I'm going to click on this Originality report score and open up Feedback Studio in another window. And as a student, again, I'm looking at this. I have access to the Originality report score layer, and I also have access to the spelling and grammar suggestions. And maybe I just want to focus on similarity right quick, so I'm going to uncheck the spelling and grammar. I can see that I got an 11. And that means that 11% of this paper was found in other sources, and that 11% is based on a total word count of 1,904. So for me, that's a little over 200 words that have matched other sources. I can take a look. What's highlighted represents the match. So for me as a student, I'm looking at those matches. If it was well paraphrased or represents original ideas, it's not highlighted. If, however, they do match things that exist in either the database, the internet database, student paper database, or otherwise, it'll show up here as being highlighted. And the student may look at that and say, you know what, that was supposed to be a quote. I apparently did not do a good job. I did not put my quotations. I did not put my citation. Let me fix that. Maybe they'll look at this and they'll say, yeah, I thought I paraphrased this well, but apparently I did not. So let me take a look at that and make changes and submit a better paper to my instructor. The students can also click on this to see if you've excluded quotes or the bibliography and sources that are less than a certain number of words. Maybe after I take a look at things that are highlighted that I need to address, I can click on the spelling and grammar suggestions. Let me unclick similarity. And I can look at that and I can say, okay, so that says it's misspelled, but it's a scientific word. It's not in the dictionary. That's spelled correctly. I just double checked it. That one's also supposed to be misspelled, but nope, that's a specific epithet for peaches. We're good. But maybe they look at that and they're like, I don't know what P/V means. It says you've used the passive voice. You may want to revise it using the active voice. They're still not sure what that means. They can click on View Handbook and get a full explanation of what passive voice and active voice means, along with instructions and directions and examples. So if they need to make a change, they can. But again, treat these as spelling and grammar suggestions. Like these two words weren't in the dictionary, but they were spelled correctly, so we're good to go. And if the assignment was, please write this in the passive voice, the student says, yes, it's in the passive voice, we're good to go. But if they need to change it, it was supposed to be made in the active voice, then they can make those changes if you're using this as formative feedback. Maybe the student looks at that and says, subject, verb, may not agree, proofread the sentence. Wrong article, proofread the sentence. Okay, let's proofread the sentence. There are several diseases. Oops, I left out the S. So I, as a student, would be able to make those changes and again, submit a better paper to my instructor. Are there any questions about using spelling and grammar suggestions as formative feedback? Okay. Let's go back into the instructor view. And again, I can see that the student right here has an assignment that's due. If you will give me just a moment, I am going to log out of this as the student and log in as the other student and submit a paper there so that you can see what, you know, two papers look like, two different kinds. Thank you for being patient. Here we go. Loading it up now. And it's saving. And I'm getting digital receipt is coming through. I wonder why it's hanging up a little bit. And by the way, I will go ahead and apologize ahead of time for the fact that all of my papers are entomologically related. I am an entomologist by training, and that's kind of all my papers are about that. So sorry about that. All right, so over here, let me go back, close out this window. Go back into my instructor window and refresh. That score was going to be pending, so I'll go on to the next one and we'll come back to that. So here's my similarity report score. Again, for that student that just submitted, just like them, I can see that this paper got an 11. So I'm going to open up the layers. I can see there's a grading layer. Grading layer is in blue. This matches the grading layer. That's what controls it. Similarity layer is in red. What controls the similarity layer is also in red. And E-rater is in purple. What controls the E-rater is also in purple. Again, 11% of this paper were found in other sources. What's highlighted represents the matches. You can see that these are the major matches. They're numbered and color-coded. Number 1 in red matches 1 in red. 2 in pink matches 2 in pink. 3 in purple matches 3 in purple. And I can also see that 7% of this paper was found here. 2% was found here, and 2% was found here. I can click on the number 2 here, and I can see a snippet of that source. I can see it's an internet source. If I click on the open book, I can see the full text of that original source. What's highlighted in red is what the student took from this source. Same thing here. I can click on that number 1. I see a snippet. Open up that book. What's highlighted in red is what the student borrowed from this source. Now these are the major matches, but they're not every match. And if I wanted to see every match, I can click on this right here to view all the sources. And what's highlighted in the page is what's found here. And what's highlighted here in the page is found here. And if I click on this, what's highlighted in the page is found here. And if I click on that, what's highlighted in the page was found here. And if you notice, that's all the same text. And you will find that, especially when it comes to internet sources, the same information is found on one spot, found on that spot, found on this one, found on this one, found on this one. So you get a lot of duplicated sources because frankly, there's a lot of duplication on the internet and there's also a lot of plagiarism. So not put too fine a point on it. So if I wanted to see every source, I can. So if my students look at this and they say, no, that's not where I got this information, I can click on this and say, well, was it here? Or was it here? Did you get it here? And you can talk to the student about that. Now, remember I said that you might not want to store the rough draft in the repository because it may compare against the final draft and you'll get an artificially high originality report score. If that happens, because life does happen, you can choose to exclude a source And if you wanted to exclude something, you can exclude it, and the originality report score will recalculate based on those exclusions. If you can't remember what you excluded, you can click on that. And if you wanted to restore something, you can, or you can restore all, and the originality report score will recalculate based on that. Let me go in here though and see if I can't find any. There's a lot of internet sources on this. You are going to see a lot of that. Students find a lot of things on the internet. There's a publication one. So if I click on that, what was highlighted in the paper is found in that publication. I'm looking for a student one. Here's a student one. So what's highlighted in my student's paper matches to a student paper that was submitted to the University of Queensland. And maybe I'm not worried about 12 words. And especially these 12 words, since they seem to be on like everything else. But if there were 400 words, for example, that matched, all 400 words are going to be highlighted. And if I wanted to investigate further, I can click on Submitted to the University of Queensland. And it reminds me that because submitted papers remain the intellectual property of the authors, instructors, and respective institutions, we at Turnitin cannot show you that paper. However, you can send a request to the instructor at the University of Queensland in this particular case, and the email says something like this: my name is, fills in your name, and I'm from, and it fills in that name. I recently had a submission to my class that had this % match and gives a percentage match. To a paper that was submitted to your class, puts in the class name, and assignment, puts in the assignment name. Would you be willing to share the original text of that paper? And if the instructor clicks reply, the full text of that student paper will show up in the email body. However, it is entirely possible that due to privacy rules at that university, that they're not allowed to share out papers outside of the institution. But rest assured, if it's a 400-word match, all 400 words will be highlighted. You may not see the other 500 words of that student paper that did not match, but you will be able to see the 400 words that did. Are there any questions on that before we go on? Okay. Now remember I said that you can exclude the quotes and the bibliography if you want to. Let me kind of go to the next thing. If I want to exclude quotes in the bibliography, I can do that. Maybe it's got a 54% of this matched to other sources. What happens if I exclude the bibliography? Apply the changes. How does that change the originality report score? Changed it significantly, and it lets me know that more than 15% of this paper is in the bibliography, or is the bibliography. So, okay. I may want to exclude quotes. See what happens if I do that. Again, letting me know that more than 50% of this paper is in the bibliography. I may want to say I'm not worried about sources that are less than, 30 words. Apply changes. See how that changes the originality report score. Maybe I thought 10% was a good idea. That 10% is going to be based on a total word count of 703, so 70 words or less. Apply changes. See if that changed the originality report score. If this is how I had set it up, and I wanted to, maybe at the assignment level, and I want to see, well, what happens if I don't exclude it by size? It lets me know. And this change does not affect what the student has. I can do it for an individual student, make those adjustments accordingly, and if that is what I want to generate as a report, then I can click on Generate New Report with these changes. But if a student, I'm looking at this and I'm saying, bibliography, nope, didn't do anything. Maybe I set 10% again at the paper level. But look at that in this case, it's based on a word count of 1,904. You can see how that changes the originality report score. Again, if that's what I want to keep, I can generate a new report. If, however, I might never mind, let's go back to the originality report score. I can do that as well. Are there any questions about the Originality report score and doing filters and exclusions? Let's take a look at the spelling and grammar suggestions. I'm going to uncheck similarity and just focus on spelling and grammar. I like to keep kind of the running tally here. 2 grammar suggestions, 4 mechanics suggestions, 5 style suggestions, 14 usage suggestions, 27 spelling suggestions. I see what the student sees, but unlike the student, I can dismiss something. And if it dismisses for me, it dismisses for the student as well. I can also put in comments. If I dismiss something I didn't mean to, I can reveal it again. Again, if I dismiss something, it dismisses for the student, and I can also make comments. Are there any questions about spelling and grammar suggestions from the instructor perspective? Maybe now that I've got my spelling and grammar done, my similarity report done, now I'm looking at my grading layer. I'm going to start by clicking on quick marks, and I can see that there's a whole lot of quick marks that are available to me. These are all quick mark sets. Some of them I like better than others. I use the academic integrity set a lot, but to me, this kind of speaks to more along the lines of what my students are writing. So I would write add citation to quotation quite a bit. Instead of actually writing this out though, all I have to do is click and drag. Cite or revise previous work. Maybe I'm talking about a work that he did last semester for my class and he's using this or trying to use it in this current paper, and I'm telling them they need to cite or revise because they need to cite that previous work. Maybe paraphrase or quote, pick one. I said that a lot. There's also positive things in there. Strong quotation, you can put that in there. But if you can toggle back and forth between all of the different sets. If there's a citation that's needed, you can click and drag that over here. This is the text that the student sees. They'd be able to click on that and see that. If I wanted to add a comment to that, I can. So I've added a comment to an existing quick mark. But if toggling back and forth between things drives you nuts, then you may want to click on the gear sign, click on the 3 horizontal bars, click create new set, click save, and you can steal marks from other sets and save it to your set, so it kind of becomes a common marks for you. You can toggle back and forth, steal things that you say most often, things that you use most often. Once you get done, I love that. I've never used that, but I really, really, really love that. Once I'm done, I can click close. And all the things that I stole and put it in one spot will show up right here from our drop down. I can click once in the paper and click on that bubble mark and put in a personal comment. Because let's face it, even though there's a whole lot of quick marks, we're not going to have everything that you're going to want to say. I can click and highlight and associate a quick mark or a personal comment with that. I don't like to leave mine on things, so I'll put it off to the side, but you can see it remains linked. If I want the strike through, I can highlight something and strike through. I can also highlight something and put in a link. So if I wanted them to insert a citation, or a citation was needed on this, and I wanted to tell them to use APA formatting, I can actually go to Purdue's website. And I can grab that link. Oops. And maybe I want to provide that link directly there. So my students have access to that. And again, I'll push off to the side because I don't like to being on there. If I find that I'm writing the same thing over and over again though, I can convert it to a quick mark. Save it. Once it's saved, it follows me from semester to semester, course to course, and assignment to assignment, so I only have to create it once. I can also click once on the paper and write directly on the paper if I want. When I'm done putting in my markups, I may want to do a feedback summary tool. I can leave up to 3 minutes of a voice comment. I can also put in a general text comment. Kind of like overviews, if you will. Once I'm done with all of that, if I don't have a rubric and I just want to enter in a grade, I can. If, however, I have a rubric, I like to view it at big screen. And if you're like me, you look at that rubric and you're like, what did I say about the intro again? What was it I said about the second paragraph? You can go back into this and you can associate particular aspects of your feedback to particular aspects of your rubric. So your students know exactly why they got the grade that they got. And it also helps you in grading. So if I look at it on a big screen again, I can say, what was it I said about the intro again? Oh, yes. Okay. What is it I said about the second paragraph? And you can click and provide information on all of that. Apply it to grade. You can see that the student made 2.65 out of 3. That translates to an 88 out of 100. If it was a 50-point assignment, it would be a 44 out of 50. Are there any questions about providing feedback to your students?
Yeah, real quick. Whenever you apply the how you were taking the comments from the front there and putting onto the rubric, would students also see that in their rubric?
Absolutely. So let's go switch over to student view. Actually, let me quickly adjust the feedback release date because I don't think you want to wait until November 5th. I could be wrong, but I don't think so. Thank you. October, so it's October 22nd. 1506, yeah, that'll work. Okay. I'm just going to refresh the page as the student. So again, the student, this is the student looking in, submission title, paper ID, when it was submitted, percent similarity report, and they can see the grade. They can click on that pencil icon and they can open up Feedback Studio in a new window. And in this particular case, I don't want the similarity. Maybe I've already looked at that. E-rater, see if there's anything that my instructor gave me. Nope, any additional. Maybe I just want to focus on grading. I'd be able to click on that. Know that this is associated with the introduction. Same thing here. These are the feedback. And then they can click on this right here and they can actually see the rubric and view the rubric. And they have the same view you do. These were all the things that were said about the intro. These are all the things that are said about the second paragraph. And if they want, they can also download a report. So if you want to download just the grading report, just make sure that that is highlighted. If you wanted to download all of the layers, highlight all of them, click the download button, and then click current view, and it downloads as a PDF. So you can also do this from your viewer, and it'll download again as a PDF. And so if you needed to talk to your student about something, there was a student meeting, you have this available to you. If it was an egregious form of plagiarism and you needed to provide the report, you can do that as well. If the student had a question, they can download this and bring it to you in your office. Or they can download this and take it to their writing center and say, look, this is what I got. This says 54%. Help me write a better paper. This is the GradeMark report. That was the general text comments. It says that on page 1, these comments were left. Page 2, this comments were left. This is the rubric. And this is what you got on the rubric. Again, the students can see that if they click on grades. Those grades get filtered directly into the Moodle gradebook. So you only have to enter it in once. And for the instructor, again, when my student has taken a look at my feedback, this symbol right here indicates that my student has looked at my feedback. And so it kind of helps me keep track of who's doing what. And, you know, sometimes I used to bribe them and say, you know, if everybody looks at my feedback, I'll give everybody 1 extra credit point. Carrots sometimes work, right? And I noticed that we have only 3 minutes left. I apologize for getting a late start, but that is essentially Feedback Studio in a nutshell, and I will be happy to entertain any questions that you might have.
Stephanie, I do have a question. It's not about Feedback Studio.
Okay.
And it may be a topic that we want to look into scheduling something more in depth for one of our follow-ups that we have.
Okay.
But I am interested, and I think that some of the English faculty in particular may also be interested in the PeerMark option. Because if I understand that correctly, that's students are responding to one another's essays. And you can provide the same rubric that you would later use to grade that with. Is that correct?
It's not the same rubric. There's
Okay.
actually questions that the students are asked, and they have to, they can be either a Likert scale or they can be like open-ended free response questions. Because what it's really targeting is to try to get that critical thinking
Gotcha.
going through. So it's not so much filling out a rubric, but for my class, whenever I did it, I required them to make comments in the praise, question, polish format, which is a publication on providing good feedback to and peer reviews. I would make my students read it. But for each section, they had to praise what they thought was good. They had to question what they thought needs improvement, and they had to make suggestions on what that improvement was. So it made them think, how would you approach this? How would you fix this? How would you address this? That was what the polished part was. And again, for me specifically, I was looking at critical thinking skills.
Now, the questions that they answer, are those provided by Turnitin already? Are those ready-made questions, or are they ones that we develop specifically for a particular style of paper that we might be having them write?
There is a question bank if you want to take a look at some of the questions that are already there, but then you can create the questions that you want yourself. And I've done a combination.
Okay, Cool. And I think, like I said, I think we might want to, maybe look into that for, in particular, for enhancing kind of what we're doing with our online English classes in terms of peer review. So that might be one of these sessions that we schedule for later as a kind of a drill down.
Absolutely. That's usually another 50 minutes.
Okay.
Training, because I actually go through and show you how to create everything and how to store the questions, because once you create the questions, you want, again, those questions to follow you from semester to semester, course to course, and assignment to assignment, so you don't have to keep typing them in. So I actually show you how to do all of that.
Cool.
But yeah, if you want to do that as part of your next training, just let me know. I think you guys have not only this one, but didn't you have another 2-hour block? I thought you had 2 2-hour blocks.
I think that's correct. I think we have another hour for this semester and then 2 hours for next semester. If that's what I remember anyway. I'd have to dig.
That absolutely sounds right. So we can repeat another one of these deep dives into Feedback Studio if you would like this semester, or next semester if you want, and we can do the advanced training however you guys want to do that, because I think this was just the first hour. So if y'all wanted to do the second hour on Feedback Studio this semester, then we can totally do that if you want to think about when a good date might be, or if you want to hold off until January, I guess we can do that, but it may be easier to try to do it before the end of winter term.
Okay, yeah, we'll chat and get back to you.
Okay, excellent. And you guys have the training videos already that were posted, and if you guys send that out, that'd be great, and just kind of advertise and let everybody know that there's a video set that was made, 4 videos in total. The first 3 are for instructors, broken down by topic, how to create the assignment, how to read the originality report, and how to provide feedback to your students. And there's actually a 4th video, which is for students, showing the students how to submit the assignment, how to access the originality report, what does it mean, and how to access feedback when the feedback release date occurs.
Yeah, and for those of you using who are using Turnitin in your course, feel free to add that student video into your actual module. Especially as they're doing their first Turnitin assignment, just so they kind of get used to that.
All right, and with that, I hope you all have a wonderful Monday and a wonderful rest of the week. If you have any other questions, just let me know.